The Marzocco Linea Micra is just hitting the market now, and we have the chance, I think we've never been this quick before, to test one thoroughly and then publish our findings right between the product release and the actual test phase. A video that you're currently seeing here today, featuring the model that's just now being launched to the public, an attempt by Marzocco to target a lower price range, offering a machine that heats up relatively quickly, is more compact, resembles the Linea, and suitable for your home and fits easily in your kitchen or perhaps your living room. And that's what we'll be talking about in this video. Hey, I'm really excited to have Espresso with you again, dear Michelle, and I'm glad we have this unique chance to do it with the new Linea Micra. It was unveiled to the public just last Thursday, and I think this is the perfect opportunity to see what it can do. I'm really looking forward to exploring its capabilities together today. And yes, we already got one. That's nice for us too, that we are so close to a machine and can tell you right at the start. We're excited to share our first impressions and thoughts with you today, what we think. First, we want to tell you about the contact to Marzocco and how we came together for this test. A few months ago, Marzocco had asked us to test a machine under NDA before its release and to not share our results, ensuring confidentiality and privacy, as they wanted to address any potential issues before making it public to publish. We wholeheartedly agreed to it. However, it never really arrived in Switzerland because it was a bit too complicated and delicate to bring a machine that had not yet been officially launched on the market into Switzerland. And then she eventually came, but we were already on the way and so forth.
So, once all the cherries have made their arduous journey down,
it all dragged out a bit more than expected, and so our testing phase almost coincided with the release. And then I said, dear people of Marzocco, make us a rental invoice because we always want to either have bought the machine or recently also rented it. That we are very clear and can independently say what we want, and that's what we're doing now. So this video, like always, will be one where we express absolutely everything we want to say freely and without any reservations. And I know you've got a lot there.
Yes. We honestly have to admit that we have a very positive relationship with the company Marzocco. You've been there before. Also the corporate structure, but also the equipment. We've always used the GS3 specifically for catering purposes. You have one at your place, and I happen to have one at home as well. However, you also went ahead and bought them as well.
About to say it.
Yes, the Swiss importer can confirm that. I bought those myself. We have a Linea downstairs in the academy. The Linea Mini. We have a Linea, the two-group commercial machine for the professional courses.
We know Marzocco, we know Linea, yes.
Definitely. And I didn't know at all what she looked like. And then as I went downstairs, she was already standing at the test table and we tested it together.
Wait, before you go in, let me just interrupt you briefly, Michelle. I just want to quickly say, the way this is starting, it's going to be another detailed video, which is why we will also make a shorter video with a summary, simply with our results. I'll link them below. So here is now the detailed version where we're going to share not only our anecdotes about Marzocco, but also whatever else comes to our mind that could be interesting to you. And below a short version, otherwise, what do you find in this video, in this test? There are a few things, of course, that as Marzocco himself says about the machine, with what goal they developed this machine, we will talk about that. This includes, among other things, the power consumption, how quickly it heats up or not. That will definitely be a topic. We'll compare the machine a bit more to the market. So how does it fit into the Marzocco range, but also maybe in relation to other machines without going too deep into other machines? We're talking about size, weight, and so on. Starting from the outside and moving inwards, we'll discuss how it feels, the craftsmanship, etc. In the next chapter, as always, we will of course brew some espresso. We will taste it. By the way, we've already finished a doppio, so mine is practically empty. And then we'll of course talk about our temperature curves that we've plotted in a slightly modified profile, so we measured even more. And this also reflects our new dual boiler test profile that we are currently developing. I'll link that for you below. Feel free to think along. This is the first time we're applying parts of it. We'd love to add your ideas and suggestions, so if you have any requests or suggestions on what else we can do with a dual boiler, then write it in the comments and we will of course also make cappuccino. Lastly, and very importantly, where can you get this machine? Where is it available? We will also talk about that and then we will have a conclusion. That's basically the content agenda. Let's start with two special features. Michelle, which we already know were also a goal in the development of this machine. The machine is supposed to offer a new entry level. Maybe you can also just say it straight. It's traded for around 3,300 euros in the EU, according to reliable sources we've consulted recently. We don't know the last details yet because the release from La Marzocco is actually coming this afternoon. So maybe you already know a bit more about this, and of course we have added it to our updated blog post, which we also link for you below for easy access. But around 3,300 euros is the entry-level price, making it the cheapest home machine from La Marzocco, this reliable manufacturer that actually makes a lot of espresso machines. Been significantly leading the way in this particular regard. It is about making something new in the future, and well, the Italian companies, well, they did not perform very well on that topic, to be honest with you.
Yeah, no shining glory.
As pioneers demonstrated power consumption, and the other big problem besides the power consumption is of course the boiler. So
the speed. I don't like waiting 25 minutes just to finally have a coffee. Well, that's how we know it, but I think a change in thinking needs to happen so that it's possible to do it in only 5 or 6 minutes, depending on what you want.
And as you can hear, that was definitely one of the primary goals of this machine, and we can confidently put a green check mark next to that, knowing we achieved it successfully.
Well, yes. It was really like that. Such an intense experience to see that a machine without a boiler. We did the test without a boiler and with a boiler. And when you turn it on, this red light here in front starts blinking and it just stopped after 4 minutes and 20 seconds.
And my app showed 10 seconds later that it's app compatible and fully app controlled, which really amazed me. My app also indicated shortly 20 seconds later, or approximately 10 seconds later, green light, and currently I am at 93.5 degrees. 4 minutes 11, or just under 4 minutes, it turned red, and this one about 3 seconds later turned green. So we now have the information that the target temperature has been reached according to the machine's readings and data outputs.
All right, now it's shooting up incredibly very fast.
Yeah. And now we can say we'll do it after 5 minutes.
I'd have said the same. Go. Drops.
Okay, so there's no heating impulse anymore, right? Active consumption.
Exactly. And then we have, because the portafilter isn't that hot yet, we can discuss that later, also about the plastic inserts. We then just basically started the thermoblock test, that is, after 5 minutes, we just quickly flushed the portafilter for 20 seconds. We're sure that it's hot enough. With a bottomless, it's okay.
The sieve and maybe the suspension, although of course there's not that much contact, so it's relatively detached.
And then we waited those 40 seconds again, relaxed, ground, tamped, basically simulated that. And then after the full minute, so after the 40 seconds, 20 seconds of rinsing, wait for 40 seconds, then we've brewed it. The first brewing was around 91 degrees. I now wait 40 seconds for the coffee to steep and develop its full flavor before moving on to the next step. Grinding, steaming, getting cups out of the dishwasher or whatever. Then we brew for 25 seconds, leave the portafilter in for 15, release it, wait 45 seconds, grind, brew, rinse for 2 seconds, start, but we control the rinsing as needed. If we happen to notice that the machine is too cold, we will go ahead and flush again. Yeah, that's cool, Ben. The first touch still needs to struggle a bit, but...
No boiler, dude.
Where we were already thinking, my goodness, after 5 whole minutes and still the boiler is off and not working at all. We have a heat exchanger system installed. I'm about to explain how it works in more detail, but before that, and still she was already there, and then we followed the protocol again, kept it clamped for 15 seconds, unclamped, grinding, tamping, doing, flushed for 2 seconds, and then after 45 seconds started brewing again, and it was over 92 degrees. Yeah. Well, the first one, if we're being harsh, yeah, it was still a bit low, but the second one was really great. And it spun around beautifully, catching everyone's attention.
So once again, just to reiterate, we're talking here about a boiler. More specifically, we're discussing a brewing time or heating time that takes approximately 5 minutes to complete. That's true, you describe it so matter-of-factly, that's...
Mad.
So very nuts.
This is
Crazy.
I have never experienced anything like that before, and that was truly an incredible wow effect. I can just quickly brew 2 espressos in only 5 minutes and then turn the machine off again. Yep, and your slow machine, I mean, take it times 7 and it's still not going to be warm. It's really, no, the GS3 is always ready within 15 to 20 minutes, which is incredibly fast. It's really amazing. It feels like, and I'll just leave that hanging there now because it's really quite impressive.
She's super fast with this. I think that's a quantum leap for the bump. It's the biggest one we've talked about so far when we discussed thermal blocks. That was also a very positive distinguishing feature of thermal blocks for us, which I really appreciate. And that brings us to another factor, which is the power consumption. We can skip discussing the bump. The current heat exchanger does not adversely impact the warming process, allowing it to run smoothly and maintain optimal efficiency. Speak of the big fat thing back there, 1.6 liters, doesn't need to be warm yet to support the 2.3 liter boiler. Yes, we have great coffee, excellent heating results, and extremely low power consumption, making the experience more efficient and enjoyable for everyone.
So we then use the machine with the steam boiler switched off, consuming another 1.6 liters, and only use the brew boiler with 0.23 liters. After 5 brew cycles, we had an electricity consumption of just 0.07 kilowatt hours. I've never seen this value before. Even with a thick film heater, I get more after conducting 5 tests. So that was really like, truly incredibly surprising, you know? And it's super fun when you casually say in the evening, I just want to quickly have 2 espressos and unwind.
Yes, and especially the combination. I think this combination is awesome. This actually allows, so again, we're talking about the version without the boiler at this point. We'll talk about the other one in a moment. That really just allows you to turn off the machine. That's effectively the amount of electricity you use. You turn off the machine, and because it heats up so quickly, you no longer have to plan your day around the espresso machine, but can enjoy your espresso according to your own schedule. So when you want, turn it on, go to the bathroom, come back, thing is done. Sure, so turning it off and on again, it's a different mode entirely and feels new. With boilers and pressure machines, we don't know that. So we must anticipate it.
And of course, you have to mention that if I want to make a cappuccino, I will need a second boiler, which I have to turn on for the best results. And then, right now, with the dual boilers. To put that in proper context, also considering the 2 heat exchangers, we didn't wait for 25 whole minutes of heating time, but we adapted the test protocol specifically to the machine. That means we started brewing after just 5 minutes with the boiler turned on, and we were already at 0.23 kilowatt hours of consumption at that point. So there are also, I would say, very low compared to a 2-circuit system, with a small caveat that we didn't have to heat for 25 minutes, but only for 5. Put that into some perspective.
I bet.
The boiler was hot after 8 minutes, so we would simply recommend from the measurement data. If you turn on both, give the machine really the 8 minutes. But still, we're actually talking about 8 whole minutes.
So super exciting, gets warm super quickly, and then stays at temperature. And we haven't even talked about the big temperature issue yet. We'll do that once we've tasted the espresso, but we can already give you a preview here. We measured 2 different profiles. First, a customized one, which we always do. A custom one for the machine, as we understand it, also a practical and very useful one for a home machine, perfectly suited for everyday use. But we've also now applied the WBC form, and you'll be able to find all the relevant data thoroughly linked in the blog post. Michael, really exciting, really nice. Let's have a look at the machine to see its features and understand better how it operates in detail. What kind of machine is this actually? What exactly are the core parameters and specifications before we try to classify it properly? Just tell me size, length, height, what type of boiler it is, and so on.
What's all in there? We are at 28 centimeter width, so really, actually very narrow.
That is also an extremely unique distinguishing feature when compared to all of the others. La Marzocco, this is now the one with the 4-leaf width.
Yes, and a height of 33.5 centimeters and a depth of 46 centimeters. Depth measured without the portafilter, which always extends a bit further forward. So if you have a tabletop, kitchen counter, whatever.
Is it 18 kilos?
Weighs 18 kilos. Just about manageable for a La Marzocco, I guess. I've had heavier. And what I found exciting is, like with the Linea Mini, I felt like you could almost camp inside the machine because there was so much space in it. And that's just basically how it is now. All very compact. The electronics in the back, the large boiler with a capacity of 1.6 liters in the middle, and the 0.23 coffee boiler in the front. And a completely different and truly fascinating way to understand and interpret a heat exchanger. I found it exciting because I'm always the one who, when the machine is there, takes a few screws out to look inside. What were they thinking? And here, someone actually had a very well thought out idea. So it felt incredibly refreshing to me overall. Because you have to imagine it like this. The boiler is placed inside and around halfway through the boiler. There is not a heat exchanger inside the boiler, but rather around the outside. And it is so long that the heat is distributed effectively. Even though we have lower heat influence, we still have this heating due to the length on plus minus, we were told, around 80-85 degrees by the time it gets to the front. That means we're already quite hot, but we move from the middle once around the outside of this boiler. The insulation is then around this heat exchanger, around this small pipe, and then it goes outside the boiler once to the brew head. And in the brew head, we then have the direct heating, once more the saturated brew group, like the La Marzocco standard. And also, of course, the measuring point in the boiler. From there, it then goes down to the portafilter below.
And if you now consider, of course, the boiler and heat exchanger principle is different, it's carried out differently with the others. How about the materials otherwise? Are the same materials used or are different ones used? Can you say something about that?
That's certainly very nice because we over here have the same good materials as the big ones.
As far as we can estimate.
Absolutely, and that's also a lot of fun, I must say. Now here is a somewhat different and unique interpretation of a steam boiler you might find quite interesting. Standing. Yes, here we have the standing boiler. This is certainly a novelty from La Marzocco side, as it never existed before.
That's how we used to do it before.
Lying flat, GS3 flat, large machines lying flat anyway, and all of this with a focus on efficiency. That we can heat the boiler up very quickly with very little energy, meaning that over time we can produce steam really fast and don't have to heat for those long periods of time, which is incredibly efficient and saves a lot of energy in the process.
Now I'm curious to see how this will affect the steam performance. I feel exactly the same way. And another key point, of course, to emphasize is probably just also that it
hurts. Yeah, but if you take a look inside the Linea Mini, then you really get the feeling above the boiler you could fit another boiler in there. There's so much space.
Otherwise, it's a rotation pump. We can connect it to the mains water supply. We can connect it to the wastewater system. And additionally, some changes on the exterior were made quite cleverly, therefore, even when compared. To the bigger sister, the Linea Mini, one can truly notice the differences in detail. For example, the drip tray. The drip tray now not only has a float, which we know from other, shall I say, more affordable Sage-like brands, but it's surprising that they came up with the idea here. In machinery, not really changed much.
I find it quite amusing and interesting what makes me get emotional. I honestly find it rather weird and strange here.
To it is intended. So the top school around here in this area is...
Right, so you have a bit more here. That part falls away because the water tank moves forward.
What's really clever, by the way, is that we can actually take it off quite easily. That's definitely a clever move, taking it out like that. That was a hassle with other models. This version just requires unscrewing the front. We don't need to remove it and can pour water with a jug. It's much more convenient and makes the process far easier and more efficient daily.
Right, so we can't take the water tank out any further than that unless we take the entire top part off. Then you can clean it too. It's definitely much better, for example, with the GS3. With the GS3, I think it's 18 screws that I always have to undo to thoroughly clean the water tank. That's a bit silly. And here it's just a rubber cover. It's the same kind of rubber cover as on the Linea Mini.
About 1.5 liters fit.
According to the description, it fits 2 liters. In reality, it's a bit more than 1.5.
The tank is relatively easy to take out. A comfortably large drip tray, despite the savings now, which I quite like a lot, comes again with 2 very useful manometers included. And what else is special about it? Once again, we have IoT control, so with the app we can make all the essential and necessary adjustments conveniently, Michael. We can adjust the temperature of the boiler, and we can also set a pre-infusion stage or set a pre-infusion. You can do this either with the water pressure if connected to mains water, or simply by first filling the brew chamber, then turning it off and on again to initiate the process. That is possible, and then it also has a few statistical tools, although the app in this pre-release version I had is not yet fully tailored to the machine. But you can see there's still a bit of Linea Mini in it. There's definitely still some work to be done. You can then also very easily turn the steam boiler on and off. So I could also decide I'll start the machine. I can also program it and set it to start every morning at 7 o'clock. I can start it without the steam boiler, and then I can also easily add the steam boiler later at any time through the app.
And in the future, you can also control the steam boiler. This wasn't possible with the Linea Mini. Here, you do this using 3 levels, not temperature settings. There are simply 3 distinct areas that will definitely still need to be updated on the app. We haven't had that on our app at the time, haven't seen it ourselves, but it's been explained to us by others. And then at the front, there's a bit of, well, it's obviously a linear machine, visually speaking. And then you have these dials, one specifically for the steam. I'll put this here once. Looks pretty neat already. You also have the hot water that comes out once. That as well, there's a considerable amount of water flowing out. And the paddle. Maybe I'll just head over to the Portafilter or something.
Let's discuss the paddle. You're not a fan. You just don't like small things. Is it just a bit too small for you?
Well, let me put it this way. When I first got to know the Linea Mini, I had this particular feeling. And it is most certainly a matter of intuitive feeling that this paddle was really quite flimsy and cheaply made in comparison to others. And with the first versions of the Linea Minis, I felt that this issue improved massively over time. And if I check our Linea from below, which is actually about 2 years old, I can clearly see the difference. When you push down on the pedal, you can really feel a very deliberate resistance. It feels good. It's a long way, yes, but it feels good. I'm having a bit of trouble here because, first of all, it's relatively short, which is also nice, but it sounds so weird. I think there's old coffee from the previous glasses.
He's in standby.
We have talked too long. It's in standby. But can we otherwise...
That doesn't sound much different than the other one.
I mean, this echo. Right. So this room we're in right now, it's not really large. I don't find that not so valuable.
You know, what I particularly like about it is the short path. Because I think with the Linea Mini, the pedal, it's an absolute joke.
So it's just a button that moves slightly.
A button that suggests to me, I always associate it with accessing my brewing profile, and it doesn't deliver at all, leaving me quite dissatisfied and frustrated. I think that it's just a bit less effective.
Be more than you seem. Exactly.
Well said. Additionally, it is also completely unrelated to any kind of flow rate, regulation, or management you might typically encounter. With some sort of brewing profile, none of that exists here. It's again just a simple pull knob or an on-off mechanism which lets the water flow and then stops it again. And the status quo is that's not changeable on the app either. We've already submitted that as a request. We certainly want to have at least a time controlled and automated control mechanism. Yeah.
There we can criticize again that it is only time controlled. I wish for a flow meter, and I still wish for a shot timer that I don't have to search for on my phone.
Michael, let's push the wish list to the back. There's still some stuff to add. And that's great. It's a new machine. There's still a lot to wish for in the next updates. Yes. This is totally surprising now. The Portafilter includes, before you elaborate, Michael. Just briefly, the Portafilter itself is actually made of plastic at the bottom and crafted from metal at the top. Of course, it has some fancy name. I wrote it in the blog post for you.
PPH or something quite similar to that.
Plastic, it is a very high quality material and so on, but there's metal on top and just this portion here that you are able to unscrew at the bottom. And with that, you get a bottomless Portafilter and inserts for the single and double baskets, providing you with all the necessary tools for brewing. By the way, I didn't directly confess that. How many grams did you put in? Yes, I also changed the sieve. If you had used the one that came with it, you would have used either an 8 or a 14.
There isn't an option for 17? Why not, though?
I don't know, because no idea. The machine is smaller, the sieves are smaller. But let's stick with the Portafilter. What would you like to say about it?
I'm deeply disappointed that there's no 17-gram basket available anymore.
Yes, I've said that up to now, so you can fairly critique it.
Exactly. I'm just stunned because I knew it. Nice that you tell me such things live on camera. So, first point. The portafilter is no longer made of stainless steel, but what is making it more affordable now is that it's made from brass, just like all the others, and it's chrome-plated for extra durability and a sleek appearance.
La Marzocco was a bit crazy about it.
Exactly. And that was always something where I said, my machine at home is from, I think, 2009. So the portafilter is 13 years old, and yet the portafilter looks brand new. And you don't get that issue with a chrome portafilter because over time, the chrome peels off and ends up in your coffee, which no one wants when enjoying their brew. I am the best example that it's not deadly because I drink coffee from many participants regularly. I'm still doing fine. Maybe it's some toughening up. And that's what you get here. Now it is like this, and I would also fully agree with this particular explanation. It doesn't really make any sense at all. Because making it with stainless steel, it doesn't flow together like that. That's also how La Marzocco explained it to us. So the coffee never actually contacts the portafilter because only the outer part is involved, yeah.
So with this one, you actually don't need to do it because it's basically a sieve. It's essentially plastic, yes. The coffee, neither the coffee grounds nor the liquid coffee come into direct contact with the actual portafilter. The portafilter is quite literally a portafilter here indeed.
Right. Additionally, La Marzocco argues that with entirely brass portafilters, it's crucial to note that brass is heavier than stainless steel, which requires more careful handling to avoid potential problems or complications that could arise from its increased weight. About the weight, you don't have that problem because there's significantly less mass, making it more balanced and easier to handle overall. I asked politely and subtly, but in the end, it's just cheaper overall, benefiting everyone greatly. Got a very clear yes then.
Of course, but the weight is actually still an issue. We'll talk about the 18 kilos again later. Weight is certainly an argument. But there is also a completely different strong argument. Do you know which one? Of course, you know, right?
I'll let you chat.
Well, it's like this. Actually, it's an interesting phenomenon. With many machines, especially those with such full and more robust portafilters, particularly those that are optimized for it to be warm faster, we indeed have the issue. The portafilter, the fatter it is, the more material it has, the less quickly it gets warm. Here, we need to heat up less. The portafilter itself doesn't matter. Plastic actually has no conductivity. So in other words, plastic doesn't draw any temperature from the espresso itself. So we have less temperature loss as the espresso makes its way into the cup, maintaining its ideal warmth. That's irrelevant for brewing now, because brewing we mostly do more or less anyway, mainly with what's happening above in the sieve. That's not really so important right now, what happens afterwards. But for the feeling when you drink the espresso, and then I know some portafilters or espresso machines, they always have a feeling of cold coffee. That's not necessarily because the water is too low in brewing temperature, rather it's due to the temperature loss along the way. And we don't have that issue here.
Definitely. And even though I still have to deal with it a bit, like internally, I think it's nicely resolved because it feels good, you know, it's like a snap clicking in with precision.
I think there's some wear in it.
I don't know that yet, I'm really curious. There is a ball inside. I think it's well done. I'm curious to see what it will look like in 5 years, whether it's still...
Aber also to a machine, so first you save yourself a second portafilter, you have a relatively clever option. You also get a bottomless portafilter with it, which you usually have to buy separately.
No need to swap portafilters from single to double shot.
It's genuinely just really so exceptionally easy and straightforward to thoroughly clean absolutely everything completely. And does it still matter for the temperature situation? And then with this amazing concept of a fast heating machine where I don't have to wait 25 minutes until the whole room is fully and thoroughly heated up, including the portafilter, of course. I think it's quite conceptually seamless, so it naturally makes you consider its unique aesthetics in a different way.
You could argue that. The interesting thing is, it's the first La Marzocco, the portafilter, that's not angled. I noticed that earlier while clamping, because I'm used to La Marzocco having an angle. Because then it stands straight and now it's just a little bit tilted.
It doesn't really feel like I'm on the plastic thing. I am actually trying to tamp properly.
No, you never do that on the La Marzocco feet because they would fall off. Nevertheless, it is always beveled in some manner anyway.
Michael, I think we've already talked quite a bit about the Portafilter. Yeah. Got another? Nope.
No, I'll put it back in the brew group.
I mean, come on, this is sort of like a compromise. You're experiencing the revival of the boiler in our video today that, let's say, suddenly puts the thermoblock under considerable pressure once again, making the entire system work much harder. Both in terms of heating time and in terms of power consumption, you need to
accept the Portafilter. Exactly. So, okay, I have already swallowed that whole thing, and I really think it's completely fine. Well done. I'm curious how long I'll live. I think the Portafilter itself is good. What I haven't processed is the 14-gram basket. We'll talk.
Yes, you also have the beautiful La Marzocco tamper you've kept hidden. Let's talk about it again when we make espresso.
Now that we've talked so much, get some coffee.
I completely agree. It's high time, and we'll postpone the classification to the moment after we have our coffee. Then we'll have a bit more context, and then we can get started. We're making some fresh espresso.
That was delicious. I want another one.
You want another one. Let's go.
With espresso cups, it works. That was pretty good. Sure, make a nice espresso. You know what I think? Sometimes he has something in his nose. Like passion fruit and plum.
You're spoiling us again with Mirama. Yes.
I think
I don't want to say so many positive things again.
I find him so nice. I won't do any more advertising. I'm sorry about last time.
Set back to 93.5. The machine is adjusted to 91.5 in between to try different temperature levels. The coffee tastes great, very smooth and sweet.
It's already well balanced.
The machine delivers exactly what we want right here for this specific coffee extraction process we use. That's a really good extraction. I think it was just right. I didn't check just now though. How was it?
25er. I've got a bit more filling in there than usual. It's now 18 in and 21.5 out, which should make a noticeable difference.
I actually like the coffee a bit longer, but I think it's really nice now too. Hey.
So there, as we mentioned before, in the cold state, it performs well, like cold, without a boiler.
Von null auf warm.
She does that when the boiler is on. Give it around 8 or 9 minutes to properly heat up. And the second protocol, which we are now testing for the dual boiler, and this is, let's say, an unofficial start of our dual boiler test series. We still need a little more time to really test them all then.
But we'd love to get feedback from you for the record on what else we want and should take a look at.
And we're also going to go through the WBC test protocol with everyone and have really now, I believe, for this specific machine, a very, very great insight. So where is the limit back there? Where does it eventually break?
Well, I mean, we already saw that after 5 minutes too. We have 3 different curves drawn here as we've made 3 different forms.
We once completed the form cold start without a functioning steam boiler, and we have once the protocol cold start with a steam boiler and then the WBC form. The start time must be 60 minutes past 1, so the machine must be hot before you can move it.
Ja, wir müssen sie dann hier, die muss man immer ein bisschen
so that it doesn't go into standby mode.
It needs to run at least an hour before you can measure it. And we mentioned earlier the first 3 touches without using the steam boiler from a cold start after 5 minutes with a heated portafilter. They're really fun. And then with each minute more relatable.
But then she starts to gradually get closer to the edge.
Getting to the edge, you really notice that the heating output just isn't enough anymore. Without a steam boiler, it started blinking a bit. So it's indicating to me, hey, you're asking too much of me. I'm reaching my personal limit, which I'm not comfortable with, and it's noticeable. Now you have to wait a moment. And there she comes again. Mm-hmm. But the third brew, after a minute's pause, was really still just over 90. The fourth infusion just barely reached 90 and then dropped quite significantly. Takes a really long time to get up. And you really have to say, it is quite sharply focused on that specific point. La Marzocco also says it's a home machine. And if you've pulled 6 espressos at home, 6 single ones, 3 double ones.
Double. And the fourth one, well, then you already have quite a few people, really a lot of people at home. That's almost a half party, I would say. Exactly. Then you just need to turn on the steam boiler or wait a bit. And with the steam boiler, we can say that we can maintain the frequency for 1 minute quite well. We can hold that, we can manage it, it works very well. And by the way, I find it very interesting that even after an hour, we can still maintain it reliably. This clearly shows how impressively stable the performance is over time. Because then we are really quite good in that 93.5 area, so we are very close to achieving our goal. We said after about 5 minutes, it typically drops by approximately 1 degree or so.
Yes, 2 depending.
Occasionally there can be 2, including the steam boiler as well. Occasionally there can be 2 in relation to the target size. But when it runs for an hour, it fully stabilizes. And then it has incredible thermal stability. So then she ends up at a point where you say, I totally need it. Like it's really, and it breaks when we go to the 10-second frequency, yes. And then 10 seconds of idle time, and then clamping and unclamping, that's still simulated. And that's where she tips over, but she's really not made for that anymore. Yes.
But not the first time, but maybe after the second or third. So it then goes around once. But that, exactly as you say, it's not built for that. And if you make so many espressos at home, then please invite us to a party.
Then invite us, and then maybe we are already at the point where you have to say, yes, exactly, that we have surpassed the initial goal of this machine, stretching its capabilities further than expected. And then there are also plenty of other possibilities. I mean, La Marzocco itself has a variety of other available models that are much better suited for this purpose.
And I'm really looking forward with great anticipation to testing out the dual boiler series in the near future. When do they all start to buckle under the pressure? So when is the critical point? When do they actually start to break down?
I know I can already tell you we'll have to go back to the 2 circles again at some point, but that's another topic. I find it interesting. I would say the machine has no offset under certain specific conditions. We test this with the Scarcell, you calibrate it, or rather you check if the boiling water is really boiling, if the temperature is correct. And it matches perfectly with our sensory perception of what we just experienced with the machine after a certain amount of time, right? And I find that highly interesting, truly fascinating. So right now our 3 different temperature curves are showing us different temperature readings. They don't always show us 93.5. Instead, they also show us 92 degrees in the initial phase, so to speak, or during the phase until we achieve a certain thermostability here. And of course, there is naturally a question of how exactly the machine is configured and calibrated and where exactly the manufacturer sets the specific target temperature point. And I would already say at this moment, it isn't set here after just 5 minutes, but rather only after she has started and she has accumulated a certain amount of time under her belt. And with that machine, you can't adjust the offset. But if I were using it, I'd think for myself about the best approach to take and what adjustments might be necessary later on. I always want my espresso to be just right, to fully and precisely reach my brewing temperature. And I would probably raise it by 1 degree now to reach the target temperature directly after 5 minutes.
Or being damn near close to it, because honestly, I wouldn't mind at all if it brewed at 94 degrees. But I'd certainly prefer her to brew at 92 instead of 90.5 or 91. It definitely depends a lot on the specific choice of coffee beans you pick. I would frame that a little bit differently. And when do you drink the majority of your coffee? If you want to drink it after 8 minutes, then 1 degree higher, 2 degrees higher, or perhaps even 1.5 degrees higher. If you say, I turn it on and then I have guests, you can also adjust it again through the app.
That would be exactly something like this, a basic understanding of the machine, something I would, in case of doubt, discuss with a dealer you trust. I would say, let's follow up with the cappuccino now. We still have a few topics we want to discuss. Sinks. Nice cappuccino.
Sure.
How was steaming?
I had the feeling it's slower than what I'm used to from La Marzocco. is currently in an emotional state. We will be establishing a specific test procedure for the heating process for the dual boiler series. We simply take cold water, 300 milliliters. Start at around 20 to 22 degrees. Always the same kettle, always the same starting temperature, and the same position. Always the same position. Always exactly opposite from the measuring probe, and then carefully test how long it takes to heat this water to 60 degrees. I say give or take around half a degree. That was now 20 seconds at the steam plant. Can we continue?
This is the 21st. I would say the thermometer is almost not fast enough to keep up. I always jump by 5 degrees here, which is certainly a bit of an approximation, you know.
But it's at least a good start.
An approach gives such a direction, so 20 to 21 seconds would be roughly needed to reach 60 degrees.
It goes a bit faster once you start to draw in some air. That's why we decided against doing this test with milk, because then you would always have to pull in exactly the same volume. But it should really provide a useful comparison, like how long does the frothing take with each individual machine when used, that we don't always have to talk about my personal feelings.
Nice cappuccino, nothing to complain about. Michel, but what I don't like so much, and this is also a phenomenon we've seen with the Linea Mini as well, you can barely fit both a scale and a cup underneath. The cup shouldn't be bigger, I mean taller.
So with the espresso cups, with ours, they are a bit smaller than the cappuccino cups. It just about fits to get the scale under the machine. With the Edo scale, we're already running out of cappuccino cups. And I think that's a bit of a shame. There's, what is it, 2 more centimeters of space?
You want large drip trays. You can't have additional space as well.
Yes, that's correct.
So somewhere there's a compromise. Sure, a little more would be nice, like 2 centimeters.
Yes, and our cups are not tall. So when I see other espresso cups that do have a certain height, I find it unfortunate a bit.
You should actually use a scale because you do not have a volumetric. While a Marzocco, what's the deal?
Let's leave it as it is. There's also a small jug with it. It's a small jug. You just have to buy a bigger one, but that's...
Und du hast jetzt aber 06 geschäumt.
That went well. That was flawless. Methodically, as we always do, it's once like this. Simply just in, tilt, and it works perfectly with the pull and roll phase.
It's a bit of a shame. I actually like the fact that with many of them, I can just put the pot down. I absolutely can't do this with this weirdly bent. So, nope, Michael, we need to get to the classification soon. But for now, I would like to ask you something. You haven't really said anything yet about how exactly the machine actually feels. This chapter of touching around and fiddling with the machine is basically a core staple in your repertoire of techniques.
Absolutely, I'm too mill-oriented.
Yeah,
How's it look?
It really is this matte black finish. I genuinely think it feels quite luxurious. Black is very nice. You can see the fingerprints quite a bit through the matte, but that's just due to the black. I think it's metallic and it feels really good. I haven't found anything that would cut me badly or anything like that. Here. Plastic.
Why is it sitting so poorly?
Why is it such a mess now?
Look here.
Oh, this inner part is simply just inserted in there. It's like an inner plastic piece. This here is a different material than above.
Is the metal plate entirely flush along the entire line? Or is there any part where it is not aligned properly?
Likely just coincidence.
Because it's not
flush.
And the next.
Here, where the drip tray slides in, the edge is slanted at every La Marzocco. That's always the case. So, panel gaps, Ben? No, that doesn't exist.
That's just a bit natural, as Sony has its own unique set of characteristics.
So, gaps, you have to get used to that. It's awful with all coffee machines. Look here. Why does this go in? Why isn't this flush here? It goes in here too, but more here. Sure, 0.5 millimeter, but that's normal.
That's interesting that you already find that normal.
That even happens with the Pro machine.
Yeah.
We'll do a story for you on gap dimensions.
We could really do that, like an outtake video of just gap measurements from all the machines.
All right, so that's a fact. I don't want to criticize that too much because it's just the way it is. Otherwise, she feels
I'd like to briefly quote Gonzalo, who mentioned that it's really quite great that you can indeed heat them up without a steam bump occurring, but the issue is that the cups won't heat up at all after that.
I also found it sensational. He told us about it yesterday. I think, and now, but you always have a bit of trouble with these cover grids as they vibrate and make noise. And the basic idea from La Marzocco, as I understand it, is there are two magnets back here that pull this plate so that it doesn't. So now here, really well, that's really well solved. Nevertheless, I had the feeling when you place keys on it, they rattle a bit, exactly. But that's, I believe, due to these slots, because back here, well, so maybe it just helped, maybe it had been worse.
Dear Michael, let's briefly categorize the machine. How exactly is it placed and how is it positioned? So we already mentioned that the entry level of La Marzocco will cost around 3,300 euros, including VAT. This estimate is a good budgeting starting point. We'll see it then. It's significantly cheaper than the Linea Mini, which had a price increase with the last adjustment. This makes it a more appealing option for those trying to stay within budget constraints. So I'd say it's clearly a much cheaper machine and much closer to many other dual boilers available.
Yes, definitely. In Switzerland, we are, I believe, at 5.6 or 5.7. In Germany, at 5.5 euros. That's quite a significant figure, and if I now take these three and compare them with other dual boilers, we're definitely closer, but still one step away from being on par with them.
Others also have profiles in that segment, providing additional valuable insights into their performance. You're certainly paying a premium for the brand.
Yes, you pay for a certain quality level, brand reputation, and craftsmanship.
Yes, and you said there are many components in there that also...
They have now also undergone a development.
Have a GS3 or Mini.
Exactly, and what you have to break down is simply all the Famer brew groups, dual boilers, it's the same thing everywhere. They buy parts and just assemble them. It's comparable to using Lego blocks. Here there's a lot of detailed development and autonomy involved. Sure, I'm not entirely sure if La Marzocco themselves developed that rotary pump, especially since it has their own logo. But what I mean is, those are not really super critical parts at all. And quite a lot has surely happened with them over the years. 2, 3 minor improvements I would still like, but otherwise I have to say it's a super solid machine for someone who says, I would like to have a La Marzocco. I want to take this high degree of precision with me. I want to be able to brew quickly and efficiently at any time. And I'm also prepared for a device that costs a significant amount of money when it is combined with a good grinder. That absolutely makes perfect sense, and I definitely see a really nice and promising middle market for this particular machine, also to smoothly pave the way into the expansive world of La Marzocco. Yes, I like it and I'm quite happy with it. There are numerous things on it that are really quite advanced and very well thought out in terms of both functionality and design. And I personally wish that some things would be copied over to the GS3. And then in 2 years, a brand new GS3 would come out, because by then mine would be absolutely ready to sell.
Michel, I think you've categorized that really well. I would still like to emphasize once again, with no doubt, that this impressive speed at the very beginning is truly a unique feature in the entire kettle boiler class, setting it entirely apart from the rest and distinguishing it from all other models out there. At the same time, regarding power consumption, if you leave out the steam boiler, it works with this machine now as well. We tested this on other machines too and unfortunately weren't successful. But here, a sufficient amount of energy is now arriving to successfully bring the boiler up to the desired temperature and to deliver us great coffee in just a short span of 5 minutes. And at the same time, we've got a La Marzocco machine right here. So that I really truly like. I agree completely. We have absolutely worked out the most important things quite well. I really don't think it's up to date to include a sieve. I still find the tamper to be good. I mean, it somehow really fits well with this particular sieve we're talking about. I'm not a big fan of this one sieve, but there's somewhere. A duo that fits together perfectly. It's just not delivered that way, but whatever. In any case, I would wish for a larger sieve. You switched it, yes.
No, but not with it.
You didn't say that at all. Yep, so naturally I swapped the 14-gram sieve.
And what it also is, I haven't measured it myself now, but simply compared to other tampers, I would confidently claim that it's a 58 and not just a 58. 2, 3, 4, 5. because it already has a decent gap. And I agree with you, that's simply the pseudo-solution for the one-cup sieve.
All right, whenever we make a simple espresso, we always say use the smallest double basket. Alternatively, you could use the 14-gram basket, that actually comes with the machine. But use the smallest double basket, then you'll have more consistent extractions than with a single basket. EU prices, Michel, indeed.
Exactly, and now you want to order the machine now? Where are you looking for it?
That's actually quite an interesting point, especially because we always say go to the local shops, test the machines, fully inspect them, and check them out thoroughly for any issues, defects, or hidden problems. Here, La Marzocco has shifted to a different sales principle, which might change customer perceptions and market dynamics. Only they handle that now. You can get this machine directly from La Marzocco itself, bypassing other retailers and middlemen you might have previously encountered. Authorized La Marzocco shops, so actually La Marzocco itself. In Germany, I believe there are 3
stores. There are none in Switzerland.
In Switzerland, it is none. I mean, in Switzerland, this machine won't be available in Switzerland itself, but it will be. Sent from Italy, I think. Oh yeah? Or from Germany, okay, or from wherever. So you can order them online because La Marzocco is now going directly to consumers with the machine.
And above all, especially at that financial level, to maintain a really reasonable price without the retailer's added margin. Right, you keep it to yourself. And you can look at it from different angles, like how great it is that you find it. Personally, I just don't find it nice, on one hand towards the long-term partner, but also because we are convinced that you need to thoroughly measure each machine to detect any offsets and respond accordingly. You can't set an offset directly in the app. You can only do that with the GS3 through the machine settings, which offers a precise way to adjust for better performance.
I don't buy such a machine online.
Ich kaufe keine Maschine online.
Auf so einer Maschine nicht online.
No, I'd probably end up buying a mill online. That's certainly something where I'd have to actually say.
So I definitely want to test them. Yes, and this can now, in certain countries, there are local stores, but I have no idea how far one would have to travel for that. But if I were to buy a Landram now, I would. Then I would somehow, I don't know, drive to Flow in Zurich. If I were in Zurich and check it out, hey, let's test the machine, and then I would buy it from him because he's my local
contact person. Yes, he handles repairs, that means. Exactly. Then I have the machine at home and
have seldom had failures with La Marzocco, to be completely honest. But then if I do encounter a problem, I have to send it all the way from Switzerland down to Italy. And I stumble at that point because I think this particular brand has grown very strongly locally with various local dealers playing a big role. I will handle it differently now, especially with one of those machines that started out as an online machine. Yeah, you simply send it back and so on. But at the same time, I also have to mention that not every dealer is good. You absolutely have to acknowledge that too. But basically, I think you shouldn't buy espresso machines online. But that's essentially my view on the whole thing. And I'm also not sure exactly how it's going to develop. I mean, they're probably starting like this now. So that's maybe for the La Marzocco Linea Micra. There's a blog post which will also be updating. We will continue working with the machine. There is a short video and maybe 1 or 2 things also on application, how you put it into operation. Because it's coming to the market now, and that's naturally exciting. And it was exciting for us to be able to test a new machine in this way. And now we know directly, Linea Micra, I think it works. It has its own position. I'm glad that it's priced quite far from the Linea, the Linea Mini, and I think it has found its place. Whether it suits you, well, that's something you'll have to decide for yourselves once you've gathered all the facts that we've written down here for us. That's all from us at this point. Thanks, bye, and see you soon. Drink good coffee. Overall, we have to say, super quiet so far. Hi. You were with the engine I had in my eyes. Actually, I kept listening until this morning when you finally decided to mention it to everyone.
I'd like to talk about the not beautifully crumpled steam plant. But it's isolated now. That's what someone told me.
I always find that annoying. Would you have really noticed it? I wouldn't have.
Wouldn't have. Big time isolated, believe me. But it was also. Now also wearing some stripes? Yes, those are some really nice scratches. Yeah, that's undoubtedly out of respect, but it's a rare exception. Such situations don't happen often, making them special and noteworthy when they do occur. 15, 15, 15. Could you please move that out of the way? I always pour it out too, and it's consistently super good every time without exception.
15 minutes now, yeah, that's still not even close to being completely finished yet. They are still going strong and showing no signs of slowing down anytime soon, which is really quite remarkable if you think about it, especially considering how long they've been at it, tirelessly working without any breaks or pauses, staying super focused. Here you can turn it away, then you'll reach the screw. Sadly, it doesn't work here. Let's just go ahead and put it on. Watch, accessory kits. Yes, and how do you see it? Very interesting indeed. I already know exactly how Michel will react to this whole situation. I think that is extremely clever. Well, railings are definitely quite important. I definitely don't find them particularly ergonomic in design. Nice 14 sieve and an 8. So, basically, you have got everything you could possibly need. But the main and most important thing is making coffee, which is certainly quite good for now, if you indeed ask for my personal opinion. So 14-gram sieve seems a bit thin. You're also doing a WBC profile.